Thanks, Anne. And Liz?
I'm Liz Shah. I'm a Principal Case Officer working in our Consumer Protection team, but I also am part of the team that manages the Delivery Graduate Scheme.
Thanks, Liz. Louis?
Hi, I'm Louis Phillips. I'm a Principal Advisor in the Office of the Internal Market, and like Liz, I'm part of the graduate team.
Thanks. Sabrina?
Hi, I'm Sabrina Wilson, a Senior Recruitment Advisor in the recruitment team.
Thanks. Caitlin?
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm on the grad scheme, currently on my second rotation in the cartels office.
Thanks. Sam?
Hi everyone, I'm Sam. I'm on the grad scheme as well. I'm in my second rotation working in the digital markets unit.
Thanks. Connie?
Hi, I'm Connie. Hi, sorry, I'm Connie. Hi, I'm Connie. I'm also on the grad scheme. Sorry, having some issues with our tech, but yeah, I'm on my first year, and for my first rotation, I am in cartels.
Thanks, Connie. Jack, do you want to go?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jack. I'm also in the first year of the graduate scheme, and I'm in the office for the internal market.
Thanks. And Livy?
Hi, I'm Livy. I'm also on my first year of rotation, and I'm in the subsidy advice unit.
Great. So the panel will talk a little bit about the scheme, what it's like to work at the CMA and the recruitment process, and then there will be an opportunity for you to ask any questions you have at the end. I think they've been disabled, but just in case, we ask that you keep your cameras and microphones off during the session. But please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can. If you just react to any of the questions in the chat, then we'll prioritise the most popular questions first. The session will be recorded and it'll be put on the CMA's YouTube channel, so you'll have a chance to watch it back later. So we'll move on to our first panel presenter, and that's Anne to introduce the session.
Hi everybody, hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so as I said, I'm a Senior Director for Antitrust, which means I'm responsible for one of the areas in the CMA that does competition enforcement, where we carry out investigations into businesses that may have broken competition law, prove that they have done so, hopefully, and impose a fine. And that often involves defending our findings and the fine in court. One recent investigation that I was involved in the pharmaceutical sector, where I've done quite a few cases over the years, resulted in us finding the businesses involved £260 million, and we won many aspects of that case after quite a long hearing in the specialist tribunal. So it was a really nice result to finally get to the end of the case and to have succeeded. So I'm also the head of the CMA's delivery profession, and it's a real privilege to have this role and to be part of the graduate scheme. Delighted that we are now in our third year of operation and looking to recruit our fourth intake of graduates. The people who have joined us so far on the scheme have been highly valued within the CMA. And we're really pleased with the contribution that they have made. And some of them have already been promoted into more senior roles in the CMA, which is really nice to see. So many years ago, I'm not going to say exactly how many, I was part of a similar scheme. I mean, my background is as an economist, but the CMA, we are interested in people with all sorts of backgrounds, really want to emphasise that. We're not all economists and lawyers. There are lots of other professions and backgrounds that exist in the CMA. But I wasn't a specialist economist when I first started my career, and I was part of the Government Economic Service, and it was a similar sort of scheme where you rotated around in different departments. And as part of that, I ended up being allocated to the Office of Fair Trading and doing competition work, which I found that I really enjoyed. And gradually over the years, I've done different roles, and realised that I, as well as enjoying the economics, I actually liked what we label delivery, which is, you know, driving the case forward and actually making sure there is an output at the end, and that what all the advisory professionals add, we're able to turn into a published report or a decision or whatever it may be. So that was how I ended up being in my current role as the head of antitrust. So one of the reasons I have stayed so long in the OFT and then into the CMA is because the nature of the work really motivates me. It's really great to work on things where you feel you are trying to improve things for people, businesses and the economy, which is how the CMA sets out its vision of what it's trying to achieve. And there are many times when I've been involved in things where I've really felt that I've made a difference. But it's also about the people. You work with great colleagues, very smart people, have really interesting debates and discussions about what to do. And you learn so much about sometimes quite obscure markets that you get involved in, but it is always super interesting. And I have found it to be highly motivating and very satisfying. The work is varied and engaging, and as I've said, I've worked on a lot of pharmaceutical cases. I'm currently involved in digital cases, but I've done work that have involved things like milk, software for schools, Scottish Islands road fuel, a whole host of cases. And if you come to the CMA, I might have an opportunity to tell you all about them. Far too many to mention at this event, but there is a lot of different things going on at the CMA, and we're at a very exciting time in our development. We've been around for 10 years nearly now, and with the new Digital Markets and Competition and Consumer Act that's going through Parliament at the moment, we're going to be getting some new powers, strengthening our powers in other areas. So it really feels like, even though we're an agency that's been around for 10 years, we're actually entering a new phase where lots of interesting, exciting things are happening. And the fact that we're getting all these new powers really reflects the fact that the government has a lot of confidence in us. We're an evidence-based organisation. We're independent. We take our own views on things. And it's really exciting, I think, to be part of that and to have an opportunity, as you would do as part of the graduate scheme, to work in 3 different areas of the CMA. So this evening, the team who organised the graduate scheme are going to tell you more about it, what the recruitment process involves, and then some of our current graduates will share their experiences so far. So I really hope you find this useful, and we hope that many of you will choose to apply for our grad scheme before the window closes on the 6th of February. And please do put your questions into the chat. We're really keen to help you to understand what working at the CMA involves, and we will do our best to answer your questions. So I'll leave it there and then hand over to the team.
Thanks, Anne. It's now hand over to Caitlin, who will talk a little bit more about the grad scheme.
Yeah, thanks. So hi, I'm Caitlin Emerson. I'm a case officer on my 2nd rotation of the grad scheme, and I'm currently working in the cartels department, which Connie will talk you through later in the presentation. So in addition to my work in cartels, I'm also working on our recruitment drive for this year's grad cohort. And I'm just going to say a few key points on the scheme before we hand over to Sabrina to talk about recruitment. So for our scheme, we're recruiting up to 10 positions. It's a 3-year scheme, but graduates will be hired on permanent contracts. So we'll move into regular positions after the scheme has ended. While on the scheme, graduates will do 3 12-month placements in different teams of the CMA. It's a delivery graduate scheme, so staff at the CMA typically work in one of a few core professions, and delivery is one of these. The work delivery professionals do is extremely varied across the CMA, but all have the common focus on the successful delivery of cases and projects. And I think Connie, Livy and Jack will say more on the work they've done on the scheme so far. Our delivery professionals come from a variety of backgrounds, such as policy or project management, whilst others are qualified lawyers or accountants. You'll also be supported by a structured training programme of courses, including funding to study for a postgraduate diploma in your 2nd year and the opportunity to gain a highly regarded project management qualification in your 3rd year. More widely, the CMA offers lots of opportunities to learn and develop. So we have a know-how team responsible for capturing all the good work that goes on at the CMA. as well as an internal academy who organise regular training sessions for people to brush up existing skills or learn new ones. And because we're part of the civil service, we get access to the wider training that it offers as well. The CMA also regularly has distinguished speakers giving talks about a range of issues, from updates on competition law and policy to wider issues such as mental health, equality and race. And alongside this, your development will be supported by a mentor, a buddy scheme and your managers. The aim of the scheme is that after completing it, you'll be ready to apply for a promotion to a G7 role at the CMA. So an example G7 role will be a principal case officer role, which is a competition specialist role and currently has a starting salary of £55,133. As participants move through the scheme, their responsibilities will grow with their experience and knowledge. As Anne said, applications are open until the 6th of Feb. And I'll hand back to Shannon. I think Sabrina is going to say a few more words about the application process.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, if Sabrina, you could now talk about the recruitment process, please.
No problem. So I'm Sabrina, Senior Recruitment Advisor at the CMA. So we just thought it might be helpful to provide a bit more detail about the recruitment process. So we use the success profile recruitment framework in line with the rest of the civil service. And the elements that we will be using in this recruitment process are behaviours, experience and abilities, and more detail can be viewed in the candidate pack. The application process, much of this is set out again in the candidate pack, but some of the key things to note are, so the first stage is to pass 3 online tests. So you've got the verbal, the numerical and the management judgment. If you pass the first test, you will automatically progress to the next test and so on. But obviously, please note the tests are not timed. You're free to complete them at your own pace, which is quite nice because you can obviously, ensure that you don't feel rushed. We would say make sure you allow yourself enough time to do the tests and subsequent application form before the closing date of the 6th of February. We would advise that you do not leave all of this until the last day, as it can take some time to complete, and if you have technical issues, you may miss the deadline. There are practice tests available online, which are again linked in the candidate pack, and I'd recommend trying them before you do the real thing. If you pass those, you will be required to submit a CV and personal statement. So just moving on to the personal statement, you need to review the essential criteria that's outlined in the role profile. You will need to evidence how well you meet each criteria in the personal statement. So I would advise that you address all criteria clearly and separately, as they are scored separately as a sift. At the sifting stage, you will be assessed and scored against the skills, experience and knowledge you have demonstrated in line with each criteria. So your application is anonymised, and you will get prompts when completing your application. When it comes to demonstrating the criteria in your application, we'd recommend using the STAR approach. This means explaining the situation, the tasks you had to do, and what was the action you took and what the result was. Generally, we're most interested in the action and results part, so try to focus on that, and also don't forget to talk about what you did rather than saying we. So just to reiterate, it's important you need to address each of the essential criteria. If you don't, your application will not be successful. It is helpful for the panel to if you make it obvious which criteria you are addressing. So don't be afraid to use separate paragraphs or even headings. Due to the anticipated high levels of interest in the graduate scheme, and obviously persistent and subject to the number of candidates that pass all 3 tests, this stage may initially involve moderation process, during which the online test scores will be reviewed further and a pass mark or scoring bar will be set. Candidates that achieve the required scoring bar mark across all 3 tests will progress to the main sift. If your application progresses to the main sift, it will be assessed against the essential criteria and will progress depending on how well you evidence and demonstrate your suitability for the role. An initial sift based on criteria 1, 2 and 3 may be held if a large number of applications are received. If your application progresses to a full sift, all elements of the essential criteria listed under the person specification above and in the attached candidate pack of the role profile will then be considered. Those successful at the sift will be invited to attend an assessment centre. These will be done virtually again this year. There will be a mix of assessments and you'll be also asked to give presentation you've prepared in advance, have an interview and undertake a written assessment. All of this will be assessed by CMA staff and the successful candidate will hear from us in April. Again, there's more information about the assessment centres in the candidate pack, and the behaviours you'll be assessed against can be found at the bottom of the role profile with various helpful links for you to read over. So to increase the depth and quality of responses to behaviour-based questions in your interview, we would recommend again that a STAR technique is adopted in this response, rather than providing sort of generic overview of how you have previously demonstrated said behaviour. Give a specific example. The civil service embraces diversity and promotes equal opportunities. As such, we run a disability confidence scheme, DCS, for candidates with disabilities who meet the minimum selection criteria. We want to make sure no one is at a disadvantage during our recruitment process because of a disability, condition or impairment. So to assist you with all of this, we will reduce or remove any barriers where possible and provide additional support. If you need a change to be made so that you can make your application, you should complete the assistance required section in the additional requirements page of your application form to tell us sort of what change you might need during the recruitment process, or you can also email recruitment@cma.gov.uk. Again, if you've got any questions around the recruitment process, again, email recruitment@cma.gov.uk. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. So we're going to hear from some of the graduates on the scheme to talk about their experience so far. So first we've got Connie.
Hi, I'm Connie. So I'm a first year grad and I've been working for the CMA since September last year. Before joining the grad scheme, I studied law for my undergrad and then I did a master's in criminology before working in academic research for a period. I joined the CMA because I wanted to find a meaningful and challenging career and I didn't want to have to be based in London. So I work in the CMA's Edinburgh office, which is in a great central location just next to Arthur's Seat. And currently we've got around 100 employees here, including several of others on the delivery grad scheme. The Edinburgh office is a great place to work. We have loads of social events and activities, including a running club, randomised coffee catch-ups, and even our own Edinburgh Christmas dinner. But I've also found, like during my time at the CMA so far, that it's really focused on making sure that colleagues across the different offices stay connected. So our hybrid and our remote working models are really strong and trips between the offices are encouraged and really easily arranged. Within the CMA, I work in the cartels team. So the work in cartels is really varied and really interesting. My responsibilities so far have included conducting evidence analysis and review as part of a CA98 investigation, collaborating with other national competition agencies on a drafting project through the CMA's international cartels work, and helping on a dawn raid. I really enjoy how there are loads of opportunities to get involved in different kinds of work, and that really allows you to develop in lots of different ways. In addition to cartel-specific work, there are also lots of opportunities to contribute to CMA life in other ways. So there are a number of staff networks, including LGBTQ+, race, carers, mental health, and many more, which allow you to meet people working across the CMA and actively contribute to developing a positive and inclusive culture. We also get special leave, which allows us to participate in volunteering activities, and that's both through the CMA and externally. So, for example, last year, the Edinburgh Cartels team spent a day planting trees in a local park.
Thanks, Connie. So now hear from Jack.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jack, and I joined the CMA in September 2023 as part of the third graduate scheme intake. I graduated from the University of Edinburgh with an undergraduate degree in history and politics, and moved straight to the CMA and am based in the Edinburgh office. I wasn't really familiar with the CMA before finding the scheme, but when I saw it, I took the time to do a bit of Googling and thought that the work the CMA does was really positive, it was meaningful, and the grad scheme seemed like a great opportunity. My first placement and current placement is with the Office for the Internal Market, or the OIM, which is part of the CMA that monitors and reports on trade between the 4 nations of the UK. It is a bit more of a political angle than some of the other parts of the CMA, which is something I quite enjoy. But we still work really closely with other departments and directorates on policy areas that are kind of cross-cutting. I work on the pipeline comms and engagement side, and there's a small team of us that's based across London, Cardiff, Belfast and Edinburgh. And some of the types of work that I do in an average day on the pipeline side is to review parliamentary debates, government consultations, policy papers, legislation, committee hearings and news reports to identify significant changes or developments. And I'll also research and write summaries on specific policy areas that we've identified. For the comms and engagement side, I've worked on an engagement plan for outreach to think tanks and then attended meetings with a variety of different think tanks and academics to discuss the kind of wider internal market policy space. And I've also been involved in meetings with all 4 governments to discuss the internal market and have prepared briefings for senior staff in preparation for appearances in front of parliamentary committees and meetings with government ministers. When I was at your point in the application process last year, I heard the kind of thing that graduates did on a day-to-day basis, and thought that I would probably be unprepared or ill-equipped to handle these tasks. However, the support I've received both formally and informally has been incredible, and I feel like I've gone up to speed really swiftly. The kind of pace of support and progression has been really helpful. I've had weekly meetings with my staff manager to discuss how work is going, how I'm settling in and kind of planning for the upcoming week and beyond in terms of what projects I've been involved in and what's expected of me. There's no point that I felt completely out of my depth, but also I've not felt like I've been stuck doing work that is not really challenging or meaningful. I think that is important, as I was a bit apprehensive that I'd be seen as kind of a pesky graduate who's set to work on something a bit more separate, but this has not been the case at all. I feel like a really valued part of the team, and I feel like I'm treated like any other team member. I do think that I'm lucky to have started my career at the CMA, and I would encourage everyone to apply.
Thanks, Jack. We'll now hear from Livy.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Livy, and I also, funnily enough, happened to join the CMA just a few months ago in September 2023. I joined just as I was finishing off my master's degree. For me, I actually have a bit of an unconventional academic history for the CMA. My undergraduate degree was in Japanese, and my master's was in global governance and diplomacy. For me, I always just knew that I wanted to do something in the public sector, and so applied for the graduate scheme because honestly, I just happened to come across it at the right moment in time. I was also working for a bank part-time where I'd honed quite a few analytical skills and just decided to go for it, really. What really appealed to me, especially as someone who doesn't really have much of a traditional economical background, was the fact that you can rotate placements every year of the scheme. The CMA is just a really varied organisation in all of the roles and functions that it has. So this is a really great way to try different things whilst also just building a big bank of interdisciplinary knowledge. My first placement has been in the subsidy advice unit, and this is a really new function for the CMA. Basically, anytime a public authority wants to grant a subsidy over a certain amount of money, they're required to submit an assessment, essentially justifying why the subsidy has more benefits than the competitive distortions it would create. And my job is effectively to sort of mark their homework. We have a 30-day deadline to produce our reports, which for the UK government is exceptionally quick. I really enjoy this as it means you get to see a number of varied and interesting projects through from start to finish, which doesn't always happen. I would say the most interesting cases I've been involved with were related to the Post Office Horizon inquiry, which is obviously really topical at the moment. My actual work is quite varied on a day-to-day basis. I have a lot of responsibility for some of the admin tasks, but I also get to be involved in a lot of the more substantive stuff as well, such as drafting parts of reports. Outside of project work, I also do a lot of team organisation, just helping everything run smoothly.
Thanks, Livy. So we're going to move on to the Q&A now. So I'll hand over to Sam, who's been monitoring the chat for all your questions.
Well, thanks, Shannon. So yeah, we've had quite a few questions coming through now, and so please do keep them coming. We'll do our best to try and work through them in the roughly half an hour remaining. So to kick off, there's a question around the selection process. This question is, I was wondering whether the selection process will take into account how much time a person has to gain work experience after graduation, as this is a graduate scheme? If yes, how will this be taken into account as an anonymised CVs are meant to be as part of the application process? So Liz, Louis, do one of you want to kick off on this question?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, so in short, no, we won't be taking into account the amount of time you've had between graduating to get work experience. I mean, we appreciate that some applicants may have little or no work experience if you've just graduated from university. Others may have other experience. I think the key is that we're looking for how your work experience or your education experience or your other experience that you've gained in other parts of life essentially demonstrate how you meet the essential criteria. So however that demonstrates that you meet the criteria, whatever kind of experience that is, that's what we're judging. But we're not particularly looking for an individual type of experience, but more the weight of evidence towards how you meet those criteria.
Great, thanks, Louis. So the next question relates to whether you have to be a recent graduate to take part on the graduate scheme. Liz, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, sure. No, you don't, is the short answer. There is no time limit, there's no age limit. As long as you are a graduate with at least a 2-2 or equivalent, or you are predicted to get one, then you can apply. And we have a range of ages of graduates, so there is no limit.
Great. So the next question relates to the number of places available on the graduate scheme and how many candidates will be invited to the assessment centres. So I think I can have a stab at answering this one. So we're recruiting for 10 positions on the graduate scheme. This could be flexible depending on sort of applications and things such as that. And I believe the assessment centres, once again, this sort of varies, but we generally invite up to 50 people to assessment centres. But again, that depends on the number of applications, quality of applications, and so forth. Moving on to the next question. So the next is about a day in the life of a graduate. So whether there's a recommended time per week for reading into cases. So perhaps Connie, could you maybe give an overview of a day in the life of a graduate?
Yeah, so I think it depends quite a lot depending on kind of which department you're in, and different people will have different experiences. So I'm in cartels, so a lot of the work we do is in focused on one specific case. So I'm usually working with the same people, and so that involves sort of communicating both people internally on our team and then also with external stakeholders and lawyers. We do a lot of evidence analysis and review, and we have specific software that we use for that. And we also do quite a lot of drafting, so that might be emails, it might be documents or letters. So yeah, quite a lot of time spent talking to people, quite a lot of time spent writing, and really I think it's kind of across the grad scheme. There's loads of different things you can get involved with. So while you might do your casework in cartels, you also have other opportunities to meet other people across the CMA through the networks or through kind of your corporate contribution and stuff like that.
Great. So the next question relates to the sort of master's postgraduate qualification that is an option as part of the degree. So someone's asked whether this is a sort of necessity and whether they have to study for a master's as part of the graduate scheme. Liz, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so we've set out in the candidate information pack that you have funding to do a postgraduate qualification, study that in your second year. The expectation is that you would do that because we think that is highly beneficial for you to pursue your career, further your knowledge whilst you're working here. And what was the second part of the question?
So I think it was just asking whether it's a sort of necessity to study as part of the graduate scheme.
I mean, it's not compulsory, but we would strongly encourage you to take on the study because we think it's highly beneficial.
Brilliant. So the next question, I think this has been reflected in quite a few actually, relates to sort of the location during the graduate schemes. Of course, we're recruiting across 3 offices in Manchester, Edinburgh and London. So one person has asked whether it's compulsory to move location during the graduate scheme. And I think another person sort of asked whether you're expected to move and whether you can move during the graduate scheme. So Louis, do you want to have a go at answering this question?
Yeah, happy to. And actually, this probably also covers the question on whether you can essentially choose which office you work in as well. But so you're able to express a preference in application about which office that you'd like to be based in. We don't require you to move offices during the scheme, but CMA staff do and are able to move offices whilst they're working at the CMA, and that's not, we wouldn't rule that out for graduates either. The reason that we have expressed the 3 offices we have, so London, Edinburgh and Manchester, is that they are essentially the largest offices at the moment that the CMA has, and probably best geared towards providing the kind of support network that we think you'll need as a new graduate joiner to the CMA. So we would probably say that if you did want to move offices during the scheme, you'd have to move to one of those other offices because you would need the same level of support network. But that's not something we would rule out, but not compulsory.
I don't know if it's just worth clarifying that when we talk about the rotations that you do as part of the scheme, that's talking about moving within different teams. So, for example, cartels, consumer enforcement or policy, and that is something different to the office locations that we have. And all of our different teams have various levels of representation across our different office locations.
So the next question relates to, it says, on completion of the graduate scheme, is there an amount of time you would need to stay at the CMA? For example, if you left, would you need to pay back any training fees, etc.? Liz, again, would you be able to answer this one?
Yeah, so there are requirements in relation to paying back fees. I can't remember exactly what the requirements are, but there are some. I think it's usually up to a year, and for your postgraduate study, you would be doing that in your 2nd year. As far as sort of requirement for staying on at the CMA once you finish the scheme, you're recruited on a permanent basis. So once you complete the 3-year scheme, you do still have a job at the CMA, which is perhaps different to some other schemes where you might be employed on a fixed term contract. Obviously, we hope that you will continue your career with us once you complete the scheme, hopefully successfully achieving a promotion in that time.
Great. So the next question, I think, is whether recruitment is on a rolling basis. I think the answer to that is quite a quick one. I think we just only recruit on a yearly basis. Moving down. So someone has asked whether the role is hybrid or whether they'll be required to work in the office every day. Sabrina, could you answer this question, please?
Yes, so at the moment within Manchester, there's no expectations until spring, summer, when we move to our interim office at 1 New Bailey. But in London and Edinburgh, it would be 40%. And it's down to the individuals. You can either do that over a week or over the month, but as long as obviously it is 40%.
Great, thank you, Sabrina. So the next question is actually for everyone on the panel. I think in the interest of time, I'll ask Anne potentially and Louis. It relates to the most interesting case you've worked on. So potentially if you both could have a go at answering this case, and then maybe Caitlin, if you could come at it from a grad's perspective as well, that'd be great.
It's like being asked to choose which of your children is your favourite. What I've been amazed about so I've worked on the Competition Act since it came into being. I mean, I've done other things alongside it, but I have worked on Competition Act cases since 2000, when the Competition Act was passed and or came into effect. And even now, I still learn new things on cases, and new things happen that I've never experienced before, which always surprises me. But one of the best cases I worked on was actually when I was more junior, where we were taking an association of pharmacists and suppliers to court because they were fixing the price of over-the-counter medicines, where you used to be that if you wanted to buy a branded aspirin or some kind of hay fever medicine or whatever it is, that the price was the same everywhere you went, and that supermarkets couldn't discount, they couldn't offer you 3 for 2s. And we took action against this in the OFT, and we had a really strong case, and the case against the other side collapsed, And the next day prices fell, and it was headlines on all the newspapers, and it was really satisfying. I was an economist at that point, and I really felt that I had made a massive contribution to this outcome. So that was a great case. But honestly, I don't think I've worked on a bad case. And sometimes people think like the digital cases or the big cases are the most exciting and interesting ones to work on. But actually, sometimes the small ones where you might be able to get things done more quickly and where you can really get to understand things, and particularly as a junior member of staff, perhaps play a bigger role in a smaller team than you would on a big case that has a very big team. So I think there are not bad cases, and I have enjoyed pretty much all the cases that I've worked on.
Yeah, I mean, probably likewise. I've worked on such a variety of different things, using different tools and looking at different sectors, some sectors that frankly I didn't even know existed before, stuff to do with construction, recruitment, aggregates, road fuels, online reviews, off-grid energy. I think probably my best or my most sort of proud, I suppose, case was working on a care homes case where we secured redress for a large number of care home residents in relation to an unfair fee that was being charged. Being able to actually give money back to people is quite a nice feeling. It feels, you know, a lot more sort of direct achievement in many ways. So.
Great. Caitlin, do you want to have a go from a grad perspective, maybe?
Sure. So sorry to go for a big tech case, but my first case at the CMA was working on our phase 2 review of the Microsoft/Xbox Activision merger. So it was the Call of Duty case, and it was super cool to work on something that was so high profile and also in the kind of gaming tech sector, which is obviously a sector people really care about, and you kind of tell people you're working on it. It's all quite exciting. And there was a lot of big moments throughout that case, but a real highlight for me was a few minutes after we'd published our final report and we were all kind of exhausted and we'd put a lot of work into it. The whole team's phones lit up with push notifications from like BBC News and the Financial Times, the New York Times, all kind of headline news about our final report, which was really cool and really exciting.
Great. So the next question is whether someone has to complete all 3 tests in one sitting, or whether they can take breaks or even do them on separate days. Liz, would you be able to answer this?
Yep, thankfully you can take them in separate sittings. You don't have to do them all on one day or one after the other. I think that would be pretty onerous. The tests are also not timed, so you don't have that pressure. I think the thing that I would really stress is that there are practice tests. There are links to those in the candidate information pack. I would really encourage you to do some of those practice tests. And when you actually do the test for real, make sure that you are in a nice sort of quiet place, so that you've got some peace and quiet to kind of think those through, and allow yourself enough time to get through the 3 tests and the application, because all of those things need to be completed before the deadline.
Great. So the next question relates to the start date of the grad scheme. So I don't think the start date, the exact date is confirmed yet, but I think as far as we can say, it'll be September of this year. But the exact date is still to be decided. Moving on to the next question. So this question is quite a specific question on whether we can do a seat, whether grads will be able to do a seat in the use of dominant position by digital platforms, and references the Digital Markets Act. So I just first emphasize that the scheme is, of course, about giving people an opportunity to experience different parts of the CMA. And one part of that is actually the rotation that I'm in at the moment, which is in the digital markets unit. So this is a bit of the CMA that's quite new, upcoming, relates to regulating big tech. And it's currently operating in shadow form. There's a bill going through Parliament. Once that bill hopefully has gone through, we'll be able to sort of enforce those new digital powers, and sort of thinking sort of maybe sort of ended this year, hopefully. So if you are successful in applying to the grad scheme, you may well get an opportunity to be placed in the digital markets unit and sort of work on those kind of cases that you spoke to. The next question relates to some of the previous experiences of the graduates before starting a career with the CMA. So potentially maybe I can go around some of the grads, starting with Shannon, moving on to Connie and Jack, and then Caitlin. Does that sound good? So Shannon, do you want to kick us off with sort of previous experiences before joining the grad scheme?
Yeah, so my background is law, so I did a law degree and then I did the postgraduate as well, and then moved on to like a traineeship. So I was going to be a solicitor, but decided that I hated that and just went about looking for something different to do. So I ended up in HR for about 6 months before I started. So I tried a few different things, and I think a lot of the grads have really different backgrounds. So you shouldn't if you don't think you've got a typical background, don't let that hold you back.
Great. Connie, do you want to speak to this one next? Thanks.
Sure, yeah. So I also did law my undergrad, but I didn't do anything to do with competition law, so I didn't have any kind of prior knowledge on that area. And I know that's something a lot of people talk about, but I really wouldn't worry about that at all, because it's very much the delivery scheme. You're not expected to have legal knowledge, and in terms of the different areas that you'll go into, lots of them will cover kind of different areas of law anyway. After I did the law undergrad, I did a master's in criminology, and then after that I worked in academic research, looking at mental health in prison for a bit. And then I decided I wanted to look for something a bit more kind of tangible in terms of the impact, and ended up applying for this.
Great. Jack, would you be able to go next?
Yeah, so I, in terms of proper qualifications, I have an undergraduate degree in history and politics. In my interview, much of the experience that I talked about was working on various kind of societies and sports teams at university and summer jobs. So I kind of don't have the same kind of professional experience, but that didn't stop or hinder me in any way compared to kind of some of the other people. And it hasn't felt like I've been disadvantaged at any point because of being an undergraduate compared to people with kind of postgrad degrees and work experience.
Thanks. Caitlin?
Yeah, so I came straight from uni. I did my LLB, my undergrad in law, and then I did a master's in finance law, mostly to confirm to myself that finance was definitely not for me at all. I had studied a little bit of, I did one module in competition in my 3rd year, but that was it. And I had no full-time work experience when I applied.
Great. And yeah, just sort of wrapping this one up, I guess I did my undergraduate degree in PP before then doing masters in international economic law. I think this probably links in with another one of the questions as well, and I guess this has sort of been answered now. Quite recent questions asked whether having a strong background in competition law, such as a master's degree, PhD, etc., offers some advantage for the applicants. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it offers a distinctive advantage. I say it's got benefits, of course, but Louis, I don't know if you want to sort of speak to whether you need a law master's degree or anything like that to apply or to be successful in getting on the grad scheme.
No, I don't think so. I think we've heard from various experience from our graduates. They've got a variety of background, and so long as you meet the requirements for this, I think we'll support you to be successful as a member of the scheme.
Can I just comment on that as well? Because I really want to emphasise this point, because we have happened to have a few graduates with a sort of legal background, but it really is not necessary at all. It's about the skills, analytical skills. If you're not interested in the work of the CMA, then probably don't apply. But if the work interests you and you're somebody who has an analytical mind, I don't think you should worry about what your degree is in. Just focus on the skills that you have, because we're really keen to be attracting people from a wider background than we love the lawyers and the economists as well, and I can say that because I am an economist too, but we also want to have a wider variety of people who have different backgrounds. So really do not take away from this that there's a massive advantage in having studied law or economics. That's not what we're going to be testing you on.
I think it's also worth saying almost the flip side is that if you are very much interested in law or you're very much interested in economics, you should really consider whether this is the right scheme for you to apply for, because it is a delivery scheme It's not a route to become legally qualified. We can't guarantee that the work that you would do would be strongly legally or economics focused. So yeah, obviously we want to encourage applications, but we also don't want people to come along thinking it's something that it's not. The CMA has other opportunities if you are more interested in those routes.
Great, thanks all. The next question relates to percentage figures available on the roles that grad schemes enter into at the conclusion of the schemes. I think I can answer this one, but Liz, Lou, please do correct me if I'm wrong. So I think right now, so this is the 4th year of the graduate scheme that you'll all be applying to, and it's a 3-year placement. So I don't think we will have any sort of specific facts and figures like that at the moment. So the next one.
Although what I would add in there is that so our most sort of senior graduate cohort, they're now in their 3rd and final year. So as Sam has said, no one has yet completed the scheme, but as Anne indicated at the beginning, we have already had a number of graduates across our 2nd and 3rd years who have successfully achieved promotion to principal case officer role within the CMA. So we're very pleased about
that. So the next question, I think this was briefly spoken to earlier. But maybe Shannon, if you want to sort of embellish this a bit more. So it asks about the input into choosing departments for your rotation. So yeah, Shannon, do you want to speak to maybe how you go about that process in 2nd and 3rd year?
Yeah, so the 1st year is randomly allocated, but kind of roughly halfway through, maybe a bit more, you'll be asked to get together with your cohort in your same year and do presentations to one another on the placement that you're in, the kind of experiences that you have. And then you'll be able to put down, I can't remember if it's maybe rank your top 3 or 5 choices. And the graduate team will try and give a fair distribution to everyone. So you get to do that for your 2nd and 3rd year.
Yeah, we ask you to rank your top 3 preferences. And so far, everyone who has been through that process has been allocated one of those.
So the next question, potentially, Anne, could you have a go answering this one? It relates to whether different offices across the CMA sort of hold different functions and sort of how different teams of the CMA are allocated across all our UK offices.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So, I mean, clearly London is the biggest office because that's the office that's been around for the longest. We have quite a big presence in Edinburgh, getting close to 100 people, I think it is, in Edinburgh, and then a growing presence in Manchester, and particularly with the DMU, there is a focus on trying to recruit for the DMU in Manchester, although people from other parts of the CMA also work there. So we have a hybrid model in terms of working from home, but also in terms of working from different offices. And so in antitrust, I have people in Manchester and in Edinburgh. And when I am selecting people from teams to form a new project team, I don't think about what location they're in. I'm just thinking about who's available and who's going to be a best fit for the project. So we try to be inclusive of people wherever they are, and it really doesn't matter which office you're in, you'll still get the same opportunities to work on cases. The only thing I think we would try to do is that, particularly for your first rotation, we'd be wanting to allocate you, if you were in one of the smaller offices, we'd want to make sure there were other people from your team who would be there to support you. And so we would think about that in selecting the first rotation. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great, thanks, Anne. So the next question relates to, we're going to the last 10 minutes, so if anyone does have any sort of particularly pressing questions, please do leave them in the chat and just sort of thumbs up, react those. So the next question relates to, sure if those in the room can still hear us. Still hear us? Okay. The next question relates to whether, if people are unsuccessful in this year's intake, what are the options for reapplication? So Sabrina, could you have a go answering this, please?
Sorry, could you just repeat the end of that question? You cut out a bit there.
Yeah, of course. So if candidates are unsuccessful in this year's intake, what are the options for reapplication?
So obviously we advertise these on an annual basis. So you could always apply the following year. But I think, as one of our other colleagues mentioned, there are other opportunities within the CMA, other sort of graduate opportunities. So it's always worth maybe keeping an eye on civil service jobs or setting yourself up for job alerts. Also, we do run a number of open houses as well for other sort of graduate opportunities, so it's worthwhile sort of keeping a lookout for those in case unfortunately you wasn't successful in this round.
Can I just come in on that as well, because there are a couple of people who have applied more than once and then were successful, so don't rule it out. But yes, there are other, as Sabrina said, lots of other opportunities as well. But if it's something you're really keen on and you really like to be part of the graduate scheme, it has been done to not be successful first time around, but to be successful on a later application.
Thanks all. So we've only got a small amount of time left. I'll try and fit in as many questions as possible, but I would say if there are any questions really specific to recruitment, or quite specific questions in general, please do just email. I think we've got the recruitment email and the graduate scheme email, which I'll post in the chat shortly. So moving on to the next question, there's a question on the masters again. So whether the masters is in anything specific, or can we choose? How do we choose? Louis, could you ever go answering that question, please?
Yes, so in the second year of your scheme, you can study for an external academic qualification. In the candidate pack, actually, there are 5 courses that we listed, which we think are suitable courses for that, and they're in things like law, economics, and management related to the work of the CMA. But we do consider other courses as well, and suggestions if they're sufficiently linked to the CMA's work. So the list of 5 in the candidate pack isn't exhaustive, and we would consider other options, but we would consider those after they've been presented to us. The 5 options are at the postgraduate diploma level as well, so not quite a master's, but that's the level that you can do essentially within a year within the part-time study on the scheme.
Great, thank you. So just looking through the remaining questions, I think we'll ask a penultimate question. So one question here is, can you apply for the graduate scheme and the general role of a case officer? Seeing 2 posts online, would you be disadvantaged in applying for one if you applied for the other? And also sort of says, because the grad scheme starts in September, does the other post start earlier? So I'm not sure if we can speak to that specific last point, but Liz, I don't know if you want to speak about whether you can apply for both.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely apply for both. I suppose what you need to think about is the difference in the 2 roles. So the graduate scheme is offering you that opportunity to rotate around different areas of the CMA and certain aspects of the training package that come with that. The other case officer post, I'm not sure which one it is, that will be based in one particular team, so you will be fixed in that team. So it's a it's a preference thing really about where you see your career going, but there's certainly no reason why you can't apply for both.
And that the other role would start as soon as the recruitment was completed, I think.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Great, so we've only got a few minutes left, so apologies if I haven't answered or asked all your questions. As I said, please do email us afterwards. So I'll just move on to the last question, which is quite a nice question to end on. It relates to the grad cohort and what you found to be the biggest challenge and opportunity of your time on the grad scheme. Couldn't really write that question better than myself, really. So potentially start with Caitlin, if you speak to this.
Sure. Yeah, so it's obviously a big transition. I came straight out of university. I didn't have any kind of full-time work experience. So just kind of learning how things in an office go, and also absorbing a lot of substance of what the CMA does. As I said, my first case was Microsoft Activision, which was a very big, high-profile case, which was kind of daunting to work on, but obviously kind of a good problem to have in terms of getting a lot of exposure to interesting work really early on. And we received a lot of support, both kind of through the training program and kind of relying on know-how and the training set out for the grads, but also the team was very supportive and aware that it was my first time working on a case, and kind of really took time to talk to us through with me, explain why certain processes were kind of going on, and also having the grads as kind of a supportive little cohort that we were all kind of learning all of this together was really nice and really helpful.
Great. And Connie, could you give us your highlights and biggest challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, in terms of challenges, I think probably, so I'm in cartels, and cartel investigations can take quite a while. So the one I joined has kind of already been going for a while before I joined the CMA, so there is quite a lot to like get stuck into. But as Caitlin said, I found everyone really supportive and helpful, and it's like there's no such thing as a silly question. You can ask anyone and people will take the time to explain things to you. So I found that really good. In terms of highlights / opportunities, I got to go on a dawn raid earlier last year, which was really exciting, using the CMA's inspection powers, so that's on site. And yeah, that was really cool.
Great. Livy?
Yeah, so I'd say probably the biggest challenge was my specific department for some reason was just very busy just as I started, which kind of did mean that I did get thrown in a bit the deep end. Just to be clear, that was because I volunteered and wanted to. You wouldn't be forced to do anything like that otherwise. So that was quite challenging, but in terms of like opportunities as well, I mean, that was also a bit of an opportunity because it meant that I got to just get really involved right away and was kind of got to prove my worth in a way. Not that I wouldn't have otherwise, but yeah, that was obviously like really good. I also really like the fact that because it's quite a new function in my specific department, I've been able to have maybe some degree of influence in the way that things develop and are run, because we're still obviously taking a lot of like active lessons in, so getting really involved basically.
Great, thank you. So I think that's great timing there. So we've just come to just 1 minute to 6:30. So yeah, apologies again if we haven't managed to answer any of your questions. I think we've dropped in the chat both the recruitment email, so that's for any sort of visa specific, recruitment application specific questions, and the grad scheme email as well. So you can drop that email, any sort of questions you have about the CMA and the experiences of the grads more broadly. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us and asking all the questions. We hope you found today's session helpful. So yeah, thank you and good luck with all of your applications.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.